My wife excused herself to take a phone call during her birthday dinner, which I had funded with our last savings. After a moment, I overheard her telling someone, "He's pathetic. We spent our last money on this ridiculous dinner, thinking it would save our marriage. Don't worry, once his mother passes, we'll get her house and I'll leave him." I grabbed a drink and returned to the table, continuing the celebration without revealing my knowledge. 6 days later, my phone exploded with 13 missed calls from her. My wife, Charlene, and I have been married for 7 years, far from perfect, but I believed we were strong enough to withstand the challenges we'd faced recently. Finances have been tight since I lost my primary source of income 8 months ago. I've been picking up gigs like food delivery and helping a friend with his lawn care side hustle. It's been tough, but I thought we were managing. Last week was Charlene's 30th birthday. Despite our financial struggles, I wanted to do something special for her. She had been mentioning a fancy restaurant downtown for months, the kind where they serve tiny portions on enormous plates and charge you as if you were buying a small car. I had been saving bits of cash, skipping lunches and selling some of my belongings online, like my Xbox and fishing gear, and I managed to put together $600. I realize that seems extravagant, but what's a birthday without something special? My mother, Dolores, has also been having health issues lately, which has added to our stress. At 68, she lives alone since Dad passed 3 years ago. I try to assist her when I can, but balancing 2 jobs while keeping our own situation afloat has been a challenge. Charlene and my mom have never had the easiest relationship, but I thought we were all adults. The night of Charlene's birthday started off wonderfully. She was genuinely surprised when I revealed where we were headed. She wore a stunning tight black dress that I hadn't seen in ages, styled her hair beautifully, and looked incredible. The restaurant was exactly what you'd expect. Dimly lit, with waiters who scrutinize your pronunciation of the menu, items and portions, small enough to leave anyone hungry. But Charlene radiated happiness, so I was content. Then came the moment that changed everything. About halfway through dinner, Charlene's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and excused herself, claiming it was an urgent work matter. At first, I didn't think much of it. We all have those moments. After about 5 minutes, I realized they were about to serve the next course, and I wanted to ask her if she preferred the chocolate dessert or the fancy fruit plate. So I stood up and headed toward the bathroom area where she had gone. That's when I heard her voice from a small alcove near the coat check. She was speaking in that low, intense tone people use when they're trying not to be overheard. I was about to call out to her when I caught what she was saying, and my blood ran cold. She was telling someone, I later found out it was a colleague named Jensen, that I was pathetic, that I had squandered our last money on a dinner she deemed foolish, thinking it would save our marriage. She continued, saying, "Don't worry, once his mother dies, we'll get her house and I'll leave him." I stood there frozen, unable to process what I was hearing. There were more remarks about how I was dragging her down, how she deserved better, and how Jensen made her feel alive. The worst part, she laughed, about spending our last savings on a dinner she thought was silly. My first instinct was to confront her immediately, but something held me back. Perhaps shock or a self-preservation instinct, or maybe I just wanted to see how deep this rabbit hole went. So I quietly retreated and returned to our table before she noticed. 2 minutes later, she came back, all smiles, apologizing for the interruption. She claimed her coworker had a crisis that needed her attention. I just nodded and smiled back while inside I felt like I was burning alive. The waiter came by asking about dessert, and I ordered both options. Charlene raised an eyebrow and protested that we couldn't afford that. I remember saying something like, "It's a special occasion. Let's treat ourselves," while thinking about how she was literally plotting to benefit from my mother's death. The rest of dinner felt surreal. I kept the conversation flowing, complimenting her outfit, all while the loop of her words played in my head. He's pathetic. We'll get her house. I'll leave him. With each passing minute, shock morphed into white-hot rage, but I didn't let it show. I paid the bill, watching all that money disappear, which hurt in a whole new way. I left a decent tip because the server hadn't done anything wrong and drove us home while Charlene chatted about how lovely the evening was. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, but she didn't notice. Too busy texting someone. 3 guesses who. When we got home, she was all over me, birthday intimacy and all that. I went through the motions, but felt nothing except disgust. Afterward, she quickly fell asleep while I stared at the ceiling, replaying everything I had heard, connecting dots I should have seen months ago, the late-night work calls, the sudden interest in my mother's health and house, the way she had been pushing me to discuss estate planning, all those little red flags I had been too trusting. or maybe too naive to see. Around 3 a.m., I carefully got out of bed and went through her phone. I know it was an invasion of privacy, but at that point, I didn't care. Surprise. Surprise. There it was. Hundreds of texts between her and Jensen going back months, discussing their future plans, making jokes at my expense, and even timelines for when they expected my mother to pass. I took screenshots and sent them to myself, then returned her phone exactly where it was. She didn't stir, probably exhausted from all that betrayal. The next morning, I acted as if everything was normal, making coffee and kissing her goodbye as she left for work, telling her I loved her while planning my next steps. This wasn't going to end with me crying into my pillow or having some dramatic confrontation where she played the victim. No, this would be calculated and methodical, a cold response. I spent yesterday thinking through every angle, making lists, considering options, and called in sick to my morning gig to clear my head. I've decided what I'm going to do. It's not pretty, but neither is planning to profit from my mother's death after years of marriage. Step 1, protect my mom. I'm heading over there today to fill her in and ensure her house and assets are secure. That's non-negotiable. Step 2, quietly start to separate our finances. It won't be easy since there's not much to divide, but what there is needs to be safeguarded. Step 3, gather more evidence. I need to know exactly how deep this goes and who else is aware of their scheme. Then comes the part where Charlene learns what happens when she underestimates the pathetic guy she married. I'll update when there's more to share. For now, I need advice on how to legally protect my mom's assets, ASAP. Anyone with experience in this area, I would appreciate your input. And if you've read this far, thanks. It still feels unreal typing it out, as if I'm watching someone else's life unravel. How did I miss the signs for so long? Was I really that blind? Update 1. First off, the response to my last post was overwhelming. Thanks to everyone who offered advice, support, and shared their own horror stories. Misery loves company, I guess. Anyway, a lot has happened since I discovered my wife's little betrayal plan, and it's time I filled you in. The morning after I posted, I went to my mom's place. As I drove there, I rehearsed what to say. How do you tell your sick mother that her daughter-in-law is essentially waiting for her to pass so she can cash in? Not exactly a Hallmark moment. When I arrived, Mum was having one of her better days, already in the kitchen, trying to make banana bread despite doctor's orders to take it easy. The house smelled wonderful, but her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the mixing spoon. I took over while she directed from her chair at the table, insisting I was doing it all wrong. Classic Mum. The whole time, I was searching for the right moment to bring up the situation with Charlene. Mom must have sensed something was off, because she finally put down her coffee mug and asked me directly what was bothering me. She said I had that same look I used to have as a kid when I broke something and was trying to hide it. So I told her everything. The birthday dinner, the overheard phone call, the texts with Jensen, the house plans, all of it. The words poured out like word vomit. I tried to be gentle, but there's really no gentle way to deliver news like that, is there? Mum's reaction wasn't what I expected. No tears, no shock. She just nodded slowly and said, "I've been waiting for you to figure it out." Wait, what? It turns out Charlene had been visiting Mom regularly for the past 4 months, always bringing little gifts, helping around the house, and asking about her medication, her will, her finances. Mum said she always felt exhausted after these visits, as if she had been interrogated. And get this, Charlene had been subtly suggesting that Mom simplify her affairs by adding Charlene's name to her accounts to make things easier when the time came. Because, Charlene works in finance and understands these matters better than Mum does. I was floored. Mom never mentioned any of this to me because she didn't want to create trouble in my marriage. She thought Charlene was just being helpful, even if it felt off. It wasn't until last month, when Charlene started pressuring her more aggressively about the house, that Mom began to feel something was amiss. That conversation with Mom changed everything. My anger shifted from simmering to a full boil. This wasn't just about Charlene betraying me. She had been manipulating my sick mother, crossing a line I didn't even know existed. After making sure Mom was okay, we called her neighbor Lane to come stay with her while I made a few stops. Lane's a retired guy who's had a crush on Mum since Dad passed, though she pretends not to notice. He arrived in 10 minutes with a casserole and his little dog. Mom acted annoyed, but I could tell she appreciated the company. My first stop was the bank where Charlene and I have our joint account. I won't bore you with the details, but I learned some interesting things. While I had been scraping by on delivery gigs and odd jobs, putting every penny into our joint account, Charlene had opened a separate savings account 6 months ago that I knew nothing about. The balance? 8,400, let that sink in. While I was selling my Xbox to afford her birthday dinner, she had over $8,000 stashed away. The account statements showed regular deposits far exceeding what her part-time job should have been paying. Either she got a huge raise she never mentioned or, well, you connect the dots. Next, I went to see my buddy Holden, who knows his way around digital stuff. I explained the situation, and he helped me recover deleted messages from our home computer's cloud backup. Oh boy, did I hit the motherlode. Not only had Charlene and Jensen been plotting this for months, but they had a whole timeline mapped out. According to their messages, Mum was expected to not last beyond winter. Those were their words, not mine. They were already browsing real estate listings in another state, discussing what they would do with the money from selling Mum's house. There were even intimate photos. Let's leave it at that. While I was uncovering all this information, Charlene was texting me as if everything was normal, asking if I remembered to pay the electric bill and if I could pick up milk on my way home. The contrast between her mundane messages and what I was discovering was surreal. I came home that evening with a plan, not a perfect one, but a start. Charlene was making dinner, which was rare enough to raise my suspicion. She asked about my day, and I gave her the performance of a lifetime, telling her work had been stressful, that I was worried about Mom, and that I felt overwhelmed with our finances. I played right into her perception of me as this pathetic, struggling husband, and she lapped it up, getting all sympathetic and rubbing my shoulders, telling me everything would work out. She even suggested we think about the future and possibly discuss options for Mom's house to relieve our burden. The audacity of this woman was next level. For the next few days, I maintained the act, moping around and looking defeated while making my moves. I got Mum to a lawyer friend of Lane's who specializes in elder care. We set up a trust for her house and assets to ensure she'd be taken care of no matter what happened. There was no way Charlene would get her hands on any of it. I moved what little money I had left in our joint account to a new account solely in my name, leaving just enough to avoid suspicion. I found a cheap studio apartment across town and paid the deposit. It's basically a shoebox with a toilet, but it's Charlene-free, which makes it a palace in my eyes. I started documenting everything, screenshots, recordings, bank statements, the works. I consulted with a divorce attorney, the free consultation kind, because not all of us have secret bank accounts with 8,000 in them. Keeping all this from Charlene has been the hardest acting job of my life. There were moments I almost slipped. Like when she was texting someone at dinner 3 nights ago, smiling at her phone, and I wanted to grab it and throw it through the window. Or when she mentioned that Jensen and his wife were having problems, a glint of satisfaction in her eye. I've kept my cool, even creating a little crisis to test her. I told her my cousin Juliet, who doesn't exist, needed to borrow $3,000 for an emergency medical procedure, claiming I felt obligated to help since she had assisted us last year. Charlene flipped, insisting we couldn't afford it, that family always takes advantage, that we needed to prioritize ourselves. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "You're right. I need to start putting myself first." The irony was completely lost on her. Yesterday, things took an interesting turn. Charlene announced she was going on a girls' weekend with co-workers, leaving Friday and returning Sunday night. She even showed me a group chat discussing their plans. What she doesn't know is that I've seen her real messages with Jensen, planning their little getaway to a cabin upstate on the same dates, very different company. The girls' weekend was my opening. With Charlene out of the house for 3 days, I could finalize everything without her knowing. My lawyer already has the divorce papers drawn up. Mum's house is now officially protected in a trust. My essential belongings are gradually making their way to the new apartment. I told Charlene I was donating old clothes and books to clear space, and she didn't even glance at the boxes. This morning, I dropped the first hint that something might be off over breakfast. I casually mentioned that Mom called and was considering changing some things with the house. Charlene nearly choked on her toast, asking what I meant, trying to sound casual, but I could see the panic in her eyes. I shrugged and said Mom was being vague, probably nothing. Charlene spent the next 20 minutes trying to subtly extract more information, then suddenly remembered she needed to make a phone call. 3 guesses. Who she was really calling. She's been on edge all day, checking her phone constantly and asking strange questions about Mom. It's like watching someone realize they might have a winning lottery ticket that could be fake. The tiny shifts in her expression would be fascinating if they weren't so infuriating. As I type this, she's upstairs packing for her girls' weekend. Keep smiling. Honey, pack those nice outfits for Jensen and enjoy your little romantic escape. Because when you come back on Sunday, Your carefully constructed house of cards is coming down hard. The plan is simple. While she's gone, I'll move the last of my belongings out. Sunday morning, my lawyer will send the divorce papers to her at the cabin with Jensen, along with printouts of all the evidence. Then I'll block her number until Sunday evening when I'll be ready to take her call from my new place. I'm not even angry anymore. Okay, that's a lie. I'm still furious, but there's also this strange sense of clarity, as if I've been swimming through mud for months, and suddenly I can see clearly. I won't miss the constant worry about money while she secretly saves. I won't miss feeling inadequate for not being able to provide the lifestyle she wanted. I won't miss the subtle put-downs and manipulation. I'll update you all after the weekend when everything goes down. Thanks again for all the support and advice. Knowing I'm not alone in this has helped more than you know. Oh, and Mom's doing better now that the stress from Charlene is off her shoulders. Lane's been coming over daily with his little dog. She pretends to be annoyed, but I caught her slipping the dog treats and laughing at Lane's terrible jokes. Silver linings, I guess. Final update, it's done. The nuclear option was deployed, and the fallout has been exactly what she deserved. First, thanks for all the support on my previous posts. Your advice helped me turn this from a simple divorce into a complete dismantling of Charlene's life as she knew it. I never thought I'd be the type to go scorched earth, but hearing her plan to profit from my mother's death changed something in me. When Charlene left for her girls' weekend on Friday morning, I executed every phase of my plan with military precision. The moment her car disappeared, I called Holden to help move my belongings. While loading, he casually mentioned knowing Jensen's wife through mutual friends. Wait, Jensen's wife? Yep, turns out Mr. Wonderful wasn't exactly single. They're separated but still legally married. A detail he forgot to share with Charlene. Holden offered to connect me with her. Perfect ammunition. By noon, I had emptied the apartment of everything I cared about. 7 years reduced to a few boxes and bags. While Holden grabbed lunch, I made some calls. First to our landlord, explaining I'd be moving out and that Charlene would need to take over the lease. Then to the utility companies, removing my name from everything. Next, I took financial action. That secret account with $8,000 in our community. Property state, both spouses have legal access. I transferred exactly half to my new account and used the rest to pay off our joint credit card debt. All legal, all documented for divorce proceedings. By evening, I was unpacking my belongings in a small studio apartment with questionable carpet stains. Not glamorous, but it was mine. No backstabbing wife, no lies, no waiting for my mother to die so someone could profit. Meanwhile, Charlene posted their first cabin photo, sunset view with 2 wine glasses, captioned, "Much needed relaxation with the girls. #blessed, #weekend vibes." Oh, the audacity. I screenshotted it for the divorce file. That night, I drafted what Lane called the nuclear email, a detailed account of everything I discovered with screenshots and timestamps. No angry accusations, just cold facts presented chronologically. I didn't send it yet though. Timing is everything. Saturday morning, I visited Mom. Lane was already there making breakfast. Mom looked better than she had in months. Removing toxic people works wonders. I explained the plan, and Mom actually high-fived me. The conversation turned serious when she mentioned struggling with her house's upkeep. Lane suggested selling and moving into his single-story ranch house. The way they looked at each other, definitely something brewing there. This sparked an idea. I called Mom's lawyer, and we have an appointment Monday to place her house in an irrevocable trust for her care. Charlene would never see a penny from it. Meanwhile, I connected with Lindsay, Jensen's wife. She wasn't surprised about the affair, but was shocked about their plans for my mother's house. We developed our own plan. She would show up at the cabin Sunday morning, about an hour after my divorce papers were delivered. Sunday morning, the courier delivered my package to the cabin at 10 a.m. Divorce papers with evidence attached, a statement of financial adjustments, a letter about Mom's house being placed in trust, printouts of Charlene's messages about waiting for Mom to die, a USB drive with all additional evidence, and yes, a glitter bomb, petty but satisfying. At 11, Lindsay texted, "I'm here." Perfect timing. I kept my phone off until 2 p.m. when I powered it back on. Notifications exploded, 13 missed calls, 27 texts, 4 voicemails. The texts told the story of her unraveling. 10:13 a.m. What is this? 10:42 a.m. You can't be serious with these papers. 11:07 a.m. Lindsay is here. WTF did you do? 11:33 a.m. Jensen is making me leave. Please answer. 12:15 p.m. My car won't start. I'm stranded. 1:06 p.m. They're firing me. Did you call my work? 1:37 p.m. My parents won't answer. What did you tell them? 2:01 p.m. I have nowhere to go, please. While this was happening, I sent the nuclear email to our entire social circle, not just for vengeance, but because they deserved to know who they'd be helping when Charlene inevitably asked for support. At 3 p.m., I called her back. She answered immediately, barely recognizable through her tears. She tried every tactic: denial, anger, bargaining, ineffective against my calm demeanor, followed by desperation. Jensen had kicked her out, her car had issues, and no one would answer her calls. I explained that home no longer existed for her. Her name was solely on the lease. Utilities would stop unless transferred, and her secret account was half empty. The most satisfying moment came when she asked about Mom's house. Even then, she was still thinking about what she could get. I took pleasure in telling her that Mom was selling it and that the proceeds would go into an irrevocable trust. But that's not fair, she said, sounding entitled to profit from my mother's death. You know what's not fair. Planning to cash in when someone dies and cheating, while your husband sells his belongings to buy you dinner. That's not fair. This is justice. I hung up and blocked her. I had dinner with Mom and Lane, helping them plan their combined household. Lane offered me his spare room for as long as I need. Today has been about tying up loose ends. My lawyer says Charlene is contesting the divorce, but has zero grounds given the evidence. Mom's house goes on the market next week, and the trust paperwork is being finalized. I've applied for better paying jobs now that I'm free from Charlene's schedule. Most surprisingly, Lindsay texted to thank me. We're meeting for coffee next week to compare notes on our respective divorces. Not a date, just two people helping each other navigate the mess. As for Charlene, she's at a motel since no one will take her in. Her workplace put her on unpaid leave. Those work calls violated company policy. Jensen wants nothing to do with her now. There's no inheritance, her credit score is tanking, and her parents finally called back, but refused to let her move home, unless she agrees to therapy. The karma is almost poetic. I won't pretend I'm completely okay. 7 years is a long time to spend on someone just waiting to leave. There are moments when sadness creeps in, not for losing Charlene, but for losing the future I had envisioned. But then I remember her words. He's pathetic, and once his mother dies, and the anger returns, some betrayals cut too deep for forgiveness.